So I'm in China right now, and we're doing a training on naturalistic teaching. And we've been talking about a couple of things, so I thought I would make a few videos to answer some of the questions that have come up. One of the questions that we talked about yesterday is, what should you do when you have a child who is really obsessively focusing on a certain toy? And of course, I haven't seen this child, so it's a little bit difficult to give input when you're not really seeing the interaction. But we did talk about some things that you might want to consider and some trial and error type things to assess. So the first thing would be if the child is overly focused on the toy and not really noticing anything else that's going on in the environment and not noticing people. Obviously, that makes it difficult to develop a connected relationship and really engage with the child around their preferences and interests and help build self-advocacy skills and any other skills that they may be wanting to learn. So the first thing we talked about doing is if you can try to figure out how to join in on that activity with the child. So the example we were talking about, there was a toy, it was like a shark toy with teeth, and the child was enjoying pushing the different teeth down and touching the teeth. So the therapist did try touching the teeth as well and interacting with the toy, like copying what the child was doing, and the child didn't like that. So that was not going to work. So in that case, we talked about, well, it might be ideal to have your own shark toy or a similar toy where you could just imitate with your own toy what the child is doing, just to show them like, hey, I like the same things that you do, and to really try to build that genuine and authentic connection. The next question that they asked about this is, well, could we just put the toy away? And for me, one of the things that I really try to focus on is I don't want to be taking anything away from a child that could be bringing them joy and, really limiting that access for them. So ideally, we would just do more, be patient, really wait and try to see what we can come up with, try to be a bit more creative and see how we could really connect with the toy that they're already engaging with. But if our attempts to connect with this particular toy is actually dysregulating for the child or, causing some difficulty. And when you try to shift to something else, if you're like, hey, let's take a break from this toy and try something else, and they're not dysregulated and that goes fine, then it's probably okay to try to transition to something where you could spend more time interacting with one another. Of course, all of that depends on whether or not the child actually wants to interact with you. But that's the whole point of like the trial and error and assessing things, just like you would see, especially with little ones, parents doing all the time. The child might be initiating certain toys, but after a certain period of time, you might see a parent try to play with something else or shift their attention to something else. So it's the same kind of idea. Let's see if there's anything else we can find enjoyment with, and if it's something we could do together, because usually during a therapy session, you're only with the child for a limited amount of time anyway, and then try to figure out, periods in the day where there's the solo play with certain toys that they're interested in engaging with by themselves, and then see if there's other items and activities that the child is interested and really experiencing a lot of joy with joining, letting other people join in that activity. So that's just one example, kind of a long video, sorry. But I think a lot of times people will ask questions about things like this and expect like a really short answer, like, yeah, you can just put the toy away, or, oh, you should have done it like this. But there's a lot of different variables and things to consider, and I'm sure I didn't even cover half of them in this video, but I do think it's a good example of some of the questions that might come up of things to assess and things we might want to look at. But the number one driving thing is, how do we create opportunities for engagement and keep the child regulated at the same time? And so whatever you decide to try, if you're noticing it's making the child distressed, then you should shift and try something else. If you notice that it's bringing more joy and it's creating more opportunities for engagement, then keep going.